Good afternoon and welcome to the special meeting of the Glendale City Council for April 25th, 2007. May we have the roll call, please?
Council members Draymond.
Here.
Quintero.
Here.
Weaver. Yusefian.
Here.
Mayor Najarian.
Here. I'm going to ask Mr. Quintero to lead us in the flag salute.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing for the invocation. On May 11, 1918, former President Teddy Roosevelt wrote the following in a letter to United States Senator Cleveland Dodge. The Armenian massacre was the greatest crime of the war, and failure to act against Turkey is to condone it, because the failure to deal radically with the Turkish horror means that all talk of guaranteeing the future peace of the world is mischievous nonsense. Yesterday marked the 92nd anniversary of a dark chapter for humanity, when over 1.5 million Armenians were either murdered or displaced from their biblical ancestral homelands in Asia Minor. Let us pray tonight that our nation's leaders will heed the words of President Teddy Roosevelt and the many other great Americans who spoke out against this genocide when it occurred, and remind the world that America is still a beacon of truth and justice in the world. We pray that the Republic of Turkey is able to look at itself and acknowledge the crime it perpetrated against humanity when it attempted to destroy the Armenian culture and nation and begin to right the wrongs of the last century. We pray that by doing so, the restless souls of the martyred will finally be able to rest in peace, for only this is when the true healing can begin. Amen.
May we have your report, Mr. Kasakian?
The agenda for the April 25, 2007 special meeting of the Glendale City Council was posted on Thursday, April 19, 2007 on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
The next item, please.
At 3 is presentation and appointments. At 3 is agenda preview for the meeting of May 1, 2007.
Mr. McFall.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. We'll start out next Tuesday, May 1st, with the beginning of a series of study sessions on the budget. That will start at 9 o'clock. In the afternoon, on the Glendale Redevelopment Agency at 2:30, the Director of Development Services will be providing a report on the approval of transfer of a for-sale housing pad at the Americana Homes. That'll be for the agency to consider this transfer. In the City Council that evening, City Council starting at the normal time, 6 o'clock. There'll be 2 action item reports for the council to consider. The first will be a report from the Director of Parks and Recreation regarding appropriating funds, essentially leftover funds from the Pacific Park project into a Pacific Park pool and security system account. And then secondly, the city attorney will be providing a report regarding public contracting bonds, insurance, and prevailing wage requirements for contractors in bidding for the city. This will be a motion for the City Council to consider. That's all.
Thank you. The next item, please.
At 3B is council recognition of Jewel Neighborhood Award recipients.
Thank you. And we have Noreen.
Good evening, Mayor Najarian, members of the City Council. I would first like to introduce the Jewel Neighborhood Program to you this evening. That's some images. Just to talk a little bit about it, to give you some background, the Jewel Neighborhood Program is a neighborhood nomination program that recognizes areas within a 1-block radius on both sides of the street where all homes are within the designated location continuously exemplify high-quality standards. The nominations should recognize curbside appeal, outstanding structural qualities or improvements that enhance the entire neighborhood, and have consistently outstanding landscape maintenance on each of the properties within that nominated area. The nominations must be for residential areas where properties have no active code enforcement cases, and the nominations can also be made by anyone for any neighborhood fitting these criteria. When nominations are received, the locations are visited by the Committee for Clean and Beautiful Glendale's Jewel Neighborhood Subcommittee members to determine if all the standards are met And once that process is complete, all the homes in the area receive a letter and a certificate of recognition. A Jewel neighborhood sign is then placed at both ends of that block, the designated area, in the public right-of-way to show that that block is a Jewel neighborhood. And here tonight is one of our Jewel neighborhood subcommittee members from the Committee for a Clean and Beautiful Glendale, Arnold Milner. And with him is Mrs. Iwanoff, a representative from the East Acacia Jewel neighborhood, who is being recognized tonight, representing her neighborhood as a Jewel Glendale.
Well, that's just very wonderful, and it's the entire neighborhood. And what sort of signage do we give them? Is it the...
Signs like this one, it's a metal reflective sign that is placed on both ends of the block that's designated as a Jewel neighborhood, and so you can see it when you come in and at either end of that block, recognizing that location.
And that's wonderful. I'm going to ask Mr. Yusefian to actually present you the award and certificate.
Thank you very much.
I think the plaque that goes in looks much better than the paper. Congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Few words.
Would you like to say anything and to address the viewing audience and those in the chambers?
Thank you very much, and I'm convinced that this is a very good beginning of more beautiful neighborhoods.
That's great. And any residents who are interested in participating and submitting their neighborhood for award, Noreen, who should they contact?
They should contact Neighborhood Services. They can contact me at 548-2125.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Clerk, I'm going to insert an item which is not on the agenda. I would like to call forward Mr. Ken Doty, Chair of the Glendale Police Foundation, formerly the Glendale Citizens for Law and Order. And my proclamation is as follows. Whereas the Glendale Police Foundation was founded in February of 1968 by then Chairman of the Board of Glendale Federal Savings and Loan Association, Raymond D. Edwards, and whereas the Glendale Police Foundation's specific and primary purpose is to promote law and order in the city of Glendale, and whereas the Glendale Police Foundation's general purposes are to encourage every citizen to become active, involved, and responsible in fighting crime and disorder, promote active community support for law enforcement by sponsoring programs to demonstrate the effectiveness of law enforcement's activities and the community's appreciation of the efforts of law enforcement. Whereas through the years, the Glendale Police Foundation has supported numerous activities to assist in keeping Glendale's residents and businesses safe, most recently spearheading canine fundraising activities for the purchase and maintenance of a canine unit for the Glendale Police Department and sponsoring the annual Police Appreciation Luncheon. Now, therefore, I, R. Najarian, Mayor of the City of Glendale, proclaim the month of May 2007 as Glendale Blue Ribbon Police Appreciation Month. I'm going to ask Councilman Draymond to make the presentation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
And we have John Gantis also
In reserve.
in reserve.
I'm the bodyguard tonight.
Takes care of me.
Mr. Doty.
Council members, this will be our 12th year of presenting the Police Awards Luncheon, which is May 10th. I'd like to emphasize that, if I might. As you notice, we have a name change this year from previous years. We're now the Glendale Police Foundation instead of Citizens for Law and Order. On May 10th, we're going to have the luncheon as we've had for the last 12 years. You can get tickets to that luncheon. They're still available by calling 548-9331. And you can also ticket a cop. This goes the other way. This is your chance to get even, I guess, or otherwise. We try to get enough tickets for all the policemen that would like to come to that luncheon free. And it's $65 for one policeman and $85 for 2 tickets for a policeman. So if any of you people like other in the audience would like to contribute that, we'd certainly appreciate it. It's all $65 for anyone that would like to come. We have a lot of room left over, so we'd like to see anyone interested to come to that. John, you want to say anything?
Nope. Thank you very much. It's May 10th, and it will be at the Glendale Hilton Hotel starting at 11:45 a.m. And we present some of the honors to the police. Of course, the Officer of the Year is the top honor. And we are honoring some citizens also that receive some awards.
Mr. Yusefian.
Mr. Gantos, is this a nonprofit organization?
Yes, it is a nonprofit. It's a 501c3 organization, and its primary purpose is to assist the Glendale Police Department in those functions that sometimes the budget doesn't cover. Primarily, in the last 2 years, we have given in excess of $100,000 towards the formation and the continuation of the K-9 unit. And we are we're going to talk to the hotel. Hopefully the dogs will be there at the luncheon. We're going to make sure that can work out in the health laws. But
Can we ticket the dogs?
Why not?
Mr. Yusefian.
Mr. Mayor, I just want to let you know it's a very good organization without a name change, and I hope the audience understands that this is an opportunity for the public to say thank you for the people who put their lives on the line. And I think, as the old saying goes, is start with yourself first. So I like to start up by saying to the public that I am going to ticket at least 10 officers.
Thank you very much.
I just wanted to let you know that. I will just let me know what the cost is. I'll write you the check. And I hope that my colleagues and the public out there will call that number. And what is the number they need to call to ticket police officers?
818-548-9331.
This is your chance. Go out there and do this, and you could ticket them and in a nice way, and they'll remember you. It won't get you off the tickets, though.
For every 2 you do, it's $85, so you know that now. So
Sounds good.
That's the ticket a cop.
that's taking a cop. He said he
I understand that, but don't have people think it's
No.
85 for that. It's
No,
$65.
$65 a person to come.
Right.
And
I'll leave it up to Mr. Gantis to do the math and let me know what that will be.
those tickets are in direct correlation to the tickets you received this year, Mr. Yusefian?
No, and I like to keep it that way. Don't get me in there.
Okay.
$425, but by far be it
you.
from me to do the math.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
We look forward to your event. The next item, please.
At 3C is a selection of nominating panel for the Building and Fire Board of Appeals to replace Mr. Jeffrey Moore. The panel is Councilmember Chair Draymond and Mayor Najarian. Original opening was February 14, 2006.
Thank you. The
And
next item.
3D is selection of nominating panel for the Commission on Status of Women to replace Dr. Maria Richard, Mayor Chair Najarian, and Councilmember Quintero. At 3E is selection of nominating panel for the Board of Zoning Appeals to replace Ms. Angela Scandari, Councilmember Chair Quintero, Councilmember Weaver.
Thank you. Mr. Yusefian.
Mr. Mayor, I would like to ask that the Civil Service Commission to be reopened for another 2 weeks so we can receive more nomination. We have only 2 applications, 2 new applications, so I'd like to open it up to allow more people to apply.
And anyone interested in applying or learning more about the position may do so. Information on the website, actual applications at the city clerk's office. Mr. Kazaki and staff can assist with any particular questions. Thank you. We are going to, as is our current custom, move city council and staff comments until after oral communications. Therefore, with that change, what would the next item be, Mr. Kazaki?
Next item is consent items, including minutes. The following are routine and may be acted upon by one motion. Any member of the council or the audience requesting separate consideration may do so by making such request before motion is proposed, and there are 2 items for which that has been done.
I have a request to pull item 5B and 5C. That leaves us 5A, the minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. With no modifications or corrections, the minutes will stand as submitted. The next item, please, 5B.
5B is Acting Director of Administrative Services regarding report on June 30, 2006 management letter, single audit report, and single audit report management letter of the City of Glendale. B1 is motion accepting the June 20, 2006 management letter.
I have two cards and perhaps some counsel who are willing to speak. So let's go to the public first. Dr. Richard Espiritu.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council, and staff. I am Dr. Richard Espiritu. I'm no longer being one-dimensional. Regarding this item, I would like someone on staff to explain page 12, where it says, provide guidance concerning the audit assessment to the risk of material mistakes, whether caused by error or fraud. I'd like somebody to explain that to me. I don't understand that. Page 12. First question.
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Espiritu, my page 12 says schedule of financial statements, findings, and questions cost June 30th.
Right. Oh, that thing is divided into three parts. It's the...
Well, I'm looking at page 12. There's nothing else on my page 12.
Is it the page 12
So
of the
which
report?
12 you're talking about?
This one here. Okay.
Oh, I see.
Right.
It's the
Okay.
page
In the-
12,
in
not
the
the
report
staff
from the
report.
auditor.
Is the
Right.
report from
The
the
auditor's
auditor.
report,
Okay,
not
thank
the
you very
staff
much.
report.
Thank you very much.
It talks about incurred but not reported. Incurred but not reported has to deal with medical information regarding workman's compensation liability. Incurred but not reported is a very interesting issue.
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry to bring this up again. I don't have the document the gentleman is talking about.
Well, I thought I had the right page, Dr. Espiritu, but I'm afraid I don't.
Where's the
Give us just a moment, please. We'll hold your time while we get till we all get on the same page.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're going to take this away from me. Okay. Go ahead.
Okay, found it. Never mind.
The report. Excerpts from
The
different
auditor's
reports have
report.
their own page numbers.
Okay, got it.
Staff report. Okay,
I got this from,
I understand, but there's several page 12, so I'm sorry to interrupt you, Dr. Espiritu.
that's quite all right.
We'll resume your time.
I'm just a gadfly anyway, so don't worry about that. Or a terrorist, whatever one you want to consider me as.
You're neither, Dr. Espiritu.
This is regarding what I'm quoting from this. This is on page 9. Okay, why has not the city had an actual study performance since 2002 and 3? This is on page 4. On page 3, it says medical premium accounts cannot be reconciled. God, gentlemen, if we can't reconcile our medical accounts for the people who are insured by the city, we have a problem. If we can't do a performance service study, an actual study on performance service from 2002 and 2003, we have problems because that's been a long time to determine what the cost of the medical insurance is actually becoming. You know, I know, and everybody else in the world knows that medical cost is going up rapidly. Mr. Mayor, 2 years ago, we had a discussion regarding the issue privately before you were elected on why is our medical costs going crazy here in the city of Glendale. I think this report has some things to say about it. Since my time is up and I don't have any other things to say. I think some of these questions should be answered. And if you would like, I would love to sit down with members of staff or the city council and discuss incurred but not reported. And because if you don't understand that, we're having problems. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Spiritu. The next speaker is Herbert Milano.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor Najarian, members of the City Council and City staff. My name is Herbert Milano. I'm here because I have taken a look at this particular audit report, the external auditor's report, for you to simply, I guess your action is simply to accept and perhaps file this report. But I think that there's a couple of areas here that perhaps should raise some eyebrows, and maybe there should be a follow-up on some of these issues. There are several issues that have to do with human resources and payroll. On page 7 of the Form 941 reconciliation, we find that the total of Form 941 does not equal to the amount placed on the general ledger. Unfortunately, this report doesn't tell us whether the amount, how much the amount is. It simply says that there's nothing material or of material significance to be reported. So we can't tell whether it's $10 or $100,000 or what is considered material. And I think that the public ought to know what that discrepancy is and what this discrepancy tells us about our internal procedures and processes. And I think that's one of the main objectives of this particular report. So that was on page 7. On page 6, there is a non-active employees, and there is also a discrepancy with regard to the number of employees that Human Resources claims it has, and the amounts of full-time. I'm sorry, and the number of people who actually received paychecks. So the numbers of employees listed as active and the number of employees to receive paychecks, there's a significant discrepancy there. And I believe that this gives us several problems that I suggest you take a look at. The first one is, I'm going to be running out of time. Mr. Najarian, you think I can ask for another minute
Would
or
you
two?
continue, Mr. Milano, and I'll ask you, I'll give you a little bit of extra time.
Thank you. There is a concept in databases that is called referential integrity, which means that what happens in one database or in certain records has a direct reference to other sets of records, so that if you add a record or if you delete a record or if you're modifying it and it goes across, they are referentially integrated. And I think that it calls for maybe some review of the way these records are being maintained within your department and within IT. But it also tells us that there might be something else with regard to the number of employees that remain active and how, if any, calculations are being made based upon the fact that those employees are remaining as active in human resources. On page number 8, there is an issue having to do with procedures in terms of accounts payable. And this is what the report says. It says that the same person who...
How much time would you like?
It's about another minute or two.
You have, I'll give you a minute 30.
Thank you. Mr. Najarian, it simply says that the person who creates a vendor is the same person who has generated the payment, and it is the same person who's actually booked it. The fact that it has been the corrections have been implemented simply tells us that this is a fairly significant issue to anyone in accounting or in auditing, that the types of controls that should be in place were not in place. And I think that it merits your attention. There's also one more item, that the city does not track the breakdown of their salary employees. This is in page number 2, having to do with the audit of the community development and housing, having to do with the CDBG employees who are not tracking their time spent actually on managing the CDBG. Basically, they're simply applying a percentage. What I want to basically state is that one of the things that we all want is proper transparency, and oftentimes the budget is discussed, during a period of the year, and it is discussed during the daytime, sometimes around 9 o'clock in the morning, 10 o'clock in the morning, and the public doesn't really get the chance to see an evaluation of our budgets and the accountability taking place. And now that you have some local residents taking an active approach, I think it would probably behoove us to have a follow-up report on precisely what these errors were and if they were material for you to take a closer look at. That's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Milano. Perhaps my colleagues have some comments, but I'd first like to ask Mr. Starbird to address this. And first, just as a brief overview, explain to us what the single audit report is, and perhaps hit on some of the highlights that were brought forth, both in the audit report and several of the issues that were brought by the speakers.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I think it would be useful, rather than have me, a layman, give you the explanation, let me ask Ron Allers, our Acting Director of Administrative Services, Finance, and I know we have representatives from the audit firm that conducted the audit. It might be useful to place in the context of the overall audit report the role of the management letter and what's being pointed out there. And in the whole context of the overall financial system, it may be useful to get a sense of the extent that our external independent auditors do their review, and as a result, sort of in that context, in the hierarchy of concerns that might be pointed out in our system, where in that hierarchy these issues that are reflected in the management letter happen to lie. I think that would be important, so we can place in context the role of the management letter, and as I say, sort of the hierarchy of the suggestions that are made here.
And,
Ron?
And maybe even the Single Audit Act.
Sure.
Contact. So
there was also a question by Dr. Spiritu relative to one of the accounting standard statements that I'm sure our auditing firm, who knows them all by heart, I'm sure can explain what that statement means. Ron, why don't you introduce our auditors, then you can take us through this.
And if my colleagues would at least hold their comments till we get a certain threshold of background and context, and then we'll open it up for questions at that point.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. We do have our external auditors here this evening from Vavrick Tryon Day. We have Ken Pulliam, who's a partner, and David Showalter, who's the manager and in charge of our account. We have before you this evening.
Run up there here. I know they're in the back. Why don't you come up and sit up here in the front so that we can get a hold of you and you can easily come forward as questions might be raised. Auditors generally shy away from this kind of public appearance, but we'll drag them up here.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, members of council, what you have before you here this evening are 3 reports that are generated by our external audit firm, Vavrick Tryon Day. The first report is titled Management Letter. In this letter, the external auditors concern themselves with 3 levels of observations, and I'll run through them quickly. One is titled a material weakness, and that is the most serious of the observations. The City of Glendale has no material weaknesses listed in this report. The second level of observation is what's called a reportable condition. This is also serious, but not as serious as a material weakness, where they would find some deficiency in our internal controls. This report lists no reportable conditions. The third level of observation you have in this report is what's called a management letter comment. And what a comment is a chance for us to improve our internal control, or maybe an operating efficiency, or do something to help the city in our operations. And what you have before you is a list of 3 observations that the external auditors have provided. One for claims liability, the second for land held for resale, and then the third for our medical insurance premium. And again, these are comments. These are not serious items. These are chances for the city to improve. And just like in years past, last year we had 7 management letter comments only, and we've implemented a majority of those. 2 years ago, we had 12 management letter comments, and I believe we have implemented the majority of those comments as well. Again, the last 3 years, all we've had are these comments, these chances for the city to improve upon them, and the management of the city has taken these comments seriously, and we have implemented the majority of these comments that the external auditors have provided to us and made these suggestions for us to improve ourselves. So that's our management letter. The single audit report is the second report. What this is an audit on all the money that the city receives from the federal government. And what the federal government used to do in years past is different agencies used to send out groups of auditors to audit the cities and different organizations. And the federal government decided that they don't need to do that separately, and so they came up with what is called a single audit, so that they've agreed upon standards to apply to all the money that the city receives, no matter what agency of the federal government may provide it to the city. So this single audit goes through and audits these major programs, and as you see from the listing, many of the major programs deal with community development, deal with HUD, or they actually even deal with transportation money that the city may receive. So they go through, the external auditors go through a process of testing our internal controls, specifically with regard to these programs. And again, we received a clean opinion. They did not list any findings in their report, and they said that we are in compliance with the audit standards set down by the federal government. In the third report, what you have is called a single audit letter management report. And in this report, again, they have listed 2 comments, 2 areas for the city to improve itself, and those dealing with getting signatures, and the second one was dealing with, I lost my train of thought. Dealing with time reporting for our community development department, and that's just going through as employees would fill out timesheets to substantiate their costs to certain programs. I would like to, if I could, Mr. Mayor and council members, just emphasize we have received clean opinions for decades from our external auditors, which we've had a variety of external auditors over the decades. And this year was no exception. We have a clean opinion on our CAFR, our financial report. All 3 of these reports are clean opinions. All we have are comments here. And the city has done a good job of implementing the suggestions by our auditors. And the city has also instituted a good plan of rotating our auditors, where we go out to RFP every 3 to 5 years to maybe select new auditors with a fresh set of eyes, a different perspective, and to come in and audit our books and to test out our controls, our internal controls. So with that, I can answer any questions by the council that you may have.
Mr. Mayor, it might be also useful to mention the role of our audit committee as well.
Yes.
In following these recommendations, reviewing the work of the outside auditors.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Starbird. We do have an audit committee here at the city, and they have reviewed our CAFR, and they've also reviewed all 3 of these reports. About 2 weeks ago, they reviewed these reports, and the external auditors were there, and they asked a variety of questions of the external auditors, and they accepted these reports as they were written. Our audit committee not only reviews the work of internal audit, but they also review the work of our external auditors as well, and they are also involved in the process of the RFP when we go out and select a new external audit firm.
And we should note the audit committee is composed of residents who have particular expertise in the field of auditing. 2 in particular are CPAs and have been in private practice. So they bring a particular expertise to that.
That is correct.
And so it's not an internal group, but it's an external group that also monitors the work of the auditors and, frankly, the work program to respond to any of the suggestions that are raised in the management letter.
Mr. Draymond, do you have a comment?
Yeah. I have a couple of comments related to this. Basically, that came to me as a commentary from the public, and I'd like to open up these comments here, get a little discussion, and maybe a little more illumination on some of this. There were 7 areas where there were observations made, if I have my numbers right, and about 4 of them had already been implemented, approximately 3 or 4. There were a couple that were, or at least one that was not implemented at the time of this because of deadline issues, as I understand it, and one that was a difference of opinion related to how to approach handling of an assessment district.
That is correct.
My question or my comment, or what I'd like to get some information for the public on, relates to not so much the audit itself, but how the appearance of how the city staff and local government works with regard to how we got to the place where these observations are made with regard to the non-implemented or even the implemented. Actually, let's talk about both. Okay?
Can I ask you to explain further, Councilmember
Sure.
Draymond?
Let's take the issue of the assessment district just as an example. It talks about an assessment district. We only have one. I was asking earlier whether that was meant to include other kinds of assessment districts, such as the Montrose Shopping Park Association is an assessment district, Adams Square Merchants Association, BID, is an assessment district. We have management assessment districts in the city. But I think the one that is being referred to here is the one on Mountain Avenue. So what is the operation of the staff or failure to operate that causes these observations to be pulled out and say, here, you need to improve in these areas? Okay?
For the Mountain Road Assessment District, the recommendation was to set it aside as a separate fund to account for the assets and liabilities of this particular assessment district, separate from the fund that it is in. The Mountain Road Assessment District is a assessment district according to 1915 Act bonds, where the city actually issued bonds to build the connector road and to improve the area above Glendale Community College back in 1988. And so we actually assess the parcels of property that are located above Glendale College, those homes up there. We collect property taxes, or the LA County collects the property taxes on behalf of the district. They remit the money to the City of Glendale, and the City of Glendale, in turn, remits that money to the trustees who pay off the bondholders. We have sufficient internal controls in the fund that this assessment district currently is. We did not see any substantial improvement in internal controls to put this into a separate fund, so that's where our, a difference of opinion arises between the external auditors and the City of Glendale.
And issues such as the discrepancy between the number of active employees and those that are non-active that haven't been paid for, I think it's just 12 months, and I think Mr. Milano might have been referring to that. Is that an issue of technology primarily, or is that?
No. And what that is, it's actually, there is no discrepancy between the number of active employees. What the comment is referring to is they are suggesting that we look at our employees, and any employee that has not received a paycheck in more than 12 months, that we would actually officially terminate that employee off of the system. This comment has to deal with the amount of, with our hourly employees or our seasonal employees that we employ either in Parks and Rec for the summers or for the library at certain times of the year, where we do leave them on the payroll so that they can come back without going through the recruitment process and the hiring process. So the issue really is that we should look at our employees and formally terminate them if they have not received a paycheck in greater than 12 months.
I think in the way Ron's describing this, people may get the wrong impression that we leave people on the payroll, meaning being paid, even though they're not home here. He means leaving their names in the system. They're not there. In fact, their employment has been terminated. We've kept their data and their name in the data system, so that if we bring them back again, we don't have to re-enter it, have the forms filled out, and all of that. What's being suggested is that we should, at the end of 12 months, if they haven't been brought back and used again, their name should be taken off the database. So it doesn't imply they're on the payroll, because the employees are hired and terminated appropriately, and in fact they're not continuing to be paid, but their names haven't been purged from the database that payroll can link itself to for the purpose of cutting a check if indeed they were utilized. I think what Ron's saying is that because some of these people may work one season, then come back the next season, that we don't quickly remove their names because we just have to then re-enter it again. The auditor suggested, well, if you've gone a whole year without a payment, you should go ahead and purge the name. So there could still be a number of employees in that base that actually aren't on the payroll but wouldn't be purged if indeed they could sit there for upwards of a year before we purge them. And that's one where we've agreed with the auditors, Ron?
Right. We have agreed with the auditors on that one.
So we'll implement that and have implemented that.
According to this, we have. Or, yes.
All right, Ron?
Say status implemented, yes, sir.
And then I think Dr. Spears, who made reference to the medical premium issue. Tell us about that one, if you could.
Yes, and this is just a reconciliation between the data that we have in our payroll system with Blue Cross or Kaiser or whoever our vendor may be. And what you have there is you always have a lot of what I'll call timing issues, where you have new staff coming on, other staff coming off, being terminated or retired or quitting on their own, what have you. And you also have a variety of dependents coming on and off, babies being born, or students no longer becoming students and going out in the work world and no longer being covered by their parents. So the reconciliation is difficult. We have been working at this at a number of months of implementing, and we should show it as implemented by the time this year's audit is done. So that is the issue in a nutshell.
And the last one that was referenced tonight was the Form 941 reconciliation.
Right. The Form 941 is a quarterly form that we have to file with the IRS, stating for all of our city employees that are paid for the quarter, we state their wages, the taxes that have been paid, Medicare taxes that have been paid. And we had an issue between reconciling that between our general ledger and our financial system in the actual Form 941. If you will notice, it does say status implemented, and we actually did reconcile it for that year and that test, but it was done a few weeks after the auditors had finished their field work. That we took that very seriously, and we worked on it for a number of weeks. The auditors came, and they finished their job. They noted it as a management letter comment. We issued the reports, but we actually did fully reconcile that. It just took us longer, and the auditors had already gone. So we took the issue seriously, and we've reconciled every quarter since then.
My last request or question would have to do, I think, with our external auditors or their representatives. Thank you, Mr. Ehlers. And that is, there's been some questions. What's your interpretation of what you've seen?
I think that as you look at these different documents, each of these documents are broken up into here are current findings, status of prior year findings, and as far as the management letter goes, we agree there are certain levels of severity of comments. The management letter being the least, basically what that is, if we put something into a management letter and it's not a reportable condition or a material weakness, all we're telling management is we found some things as we've gone through some of the processes. We'd like you to take a look at them and have them taken care of by the next time we come back. Least level of severity, and that's even as you look to the letter, we call them observations. We don't call them findings, they're just observations as we've gone through. It's also important to point out that as we conduct the audit, we look through numerous business cycles. We're going through payroll, purchasing, disbursements, treasury functions, routine transactions, non-routine transactions, utility billing cycles. We go through every major cycle as it relates to the financial systems for the cities. There are numerous transactions that we look at. We have staff on site for weeks at a time going through all these cycles. And I think it's important to point out that what we found are some observations as we've gone through those cycles. We haven't found reportable conditions, and we haven't found material weaknesses. In addition, the fact that these reports are broken into current year findings, and if they need to be repeated, they are, prior year findings, and the status and the implementation, as you'll find out, many of these have been implemented by staff. You asked a question a little bit earlier, what's the process? We're required by our professional standards that if we even draft a management letter finding, we have to follow up on that the next year to see what steps has the cities taken to ensure that that is properly followed up on. They just don't fall off. And through the use of the audit committee, our standards, and working through each of these items are reviewed on an annual basis. In addition, if there's new ones noted, they're put in, and then they're followed up on the subsequent year as a prior year finding so that we can report back to you as the city council whether that item had been implemented or not. So really it is a comprehensive audit process involving all the major business cycles as they relate to financial systems of the city, and all those are encompassed within the annual financial report, which we presented a while back, the CAFR, and then these are those final letters to wrap up the whole job as a whole.
Mr. Starbird.
The nature of the management letter, I anticipate you do each year lots of audits.
That's correct.
What's the likelihood in any one of those audits that you'll likely in a management letter generate some suggestions?
100% of the time. There aren't any audits that don't have management letters. We do large governments, and once we've been for a few years, we're able to use that audit time to get into really a lot of details. We just don't stop testing to say, hey, now we understand how the city works. We take the time from efficiencies that have been developed for the first few years to really get into a lot of the details. We've done that with the city of Glendale through all those cycles that I talked about before, and this is the outcome of that audit.
And Mr. Mayor, you've done our audit how many years now?
This is year 3.
This is year 3.
Correct.
And some of the new suggestions in the management letter, if they were past practice, I'm wondering why they weren't picked up in earlier letters. Is it the nature of the management letter and that part of the audit?
It is. Certain things pop up certain years that don't, that we just find it. We change the emphasis as far as the areas that we touch each year so that you can't get used to say, oh, the auditors only look at this, so we need to get comfortable here. We change our audit processes. We change the different types of things that we look at. We change the scope. We change the materiality. So it really is a surprise to city staff every year. They don't know what we're going to do. They don't know where we're going to test and concentrate on samples. And it's a lot of work for the city to pull all that documentation for us. But really with that, suffice to say, we do a very comprehensive look at the internal control systems that are there, and to have a city of your size with the few observations that you have, it's a compliment to your staff.
Well, that's nice to hear. Mr. Yusefian?
Yeah, couple of items. Thank you. I don't have any questions from you.
Mr.
Just
Mayor,
comments.
before he steps down, there was a question about one of the accounting statements and what it meant. It wasn't one of the suggestions. It was attached to the report as an exhibit on a number of the statements of accounting standards. I think one of the questions was regarding one of the statements.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate that. The management letter, not the single audit management letter, but the city's management letter is broken up. The last section basically is informing the city just so that we kind of give you a heads up as to what's coming. There are several new auditing standards that are taking place, and I believe the quote that was taken a little bit earlier was actually from one of those new standards. 2 of those standards come into play during the 06-07 fiscal year, and then several of the standards come into play 07-08. And we feel that basically one of our responsibilities as your auditor is to inform you of both new auditing standards that are coming up and how they'll impact your city, as well as new governmental accounting standards boards, opinions and pronouncements, and how they would impact you as well. So what was quoted a little bit earlier was actually some of the new auditing standards that are coming up, and we're just giving a heads up to the city as to potentially how they'll impact the city of Glendale.
Okay. Anything else, Mr. Yusefian?
I haven't even started anything.
Mr. Starbird.
that was yours. I'm
suggested
sorry.
he address the statement before he sits down so he wouldn't have to come back up again.
Mr. Yusefian.
Okay. Thank you. I had some questions on this, and actually I was going to pull this. I understand there has been some explanation of some of the items. I do have some concerns, and some of these concerns, it's not new. I think Mr. Mukim brought this up a couple of times when Bob Franz was still here. And there are some of these issues that were around when Mr. Hoffman was still the director of HR. And one of those concerns are the issue that basically deals with medical premiums. And while I understand it could be something that they caught one time, the reality is, according to the report, says this is a repeat condition that was reported in connection with the audit of the city's basic financial statement for the years ending June 30th, 2005. Okay? Not a new thing. It continues to repeat. What is it that continuing to repeat? The city was unable to provide details of the balances or an explanation of the increase. They couldn't even provide an explanation. Forget that you couldn't give details, but I would have hoped as they wrote this, they talked to you, you could have at least given the explanation, which you tried to attempt to give some of this explanation. Hopefully that would have helped to that. The other thing is on page 4, it says, further, the city of Glendale has not had an actuarial study performed since 2002-2003. We're at 2007. I think maybe that's something that we need to also deal with. The other item that kind of caught my eye was the non-active employees. And while this is in non-active employees, it's very simple to deal with. You have active employees, and you have people that are non-active. All you have to do is just put in your computer non-active. You don't have to delete the whole file. Keep the file, just put NA, not active, something of that nature. So if the guy comes back in the 15th month, which is more than 12 months, you don't have to start all over again and accumulate all that information. The same issue existed, if you remember, some of you, when Mr. Hoffman was in charge, and we had all these workman comp cases. And I was alarmed to see 1,700 cases. But they were not 1,700 cases. These were cases that were opened and closed, and the employee was still alive, without a case. But they kept the case open just in case one day the employee may file another case. Hence, when the public looks, and we looked, I'm going, Jesus, what are we doing? We got 2,000 people, and 1,700 of them are in workman's comp? Made no sense. And it took a while when brought that up. That's when they decided eliminating cases or closing cases that they're not actually active. So when an employee or a retired employee decides to open up another workman's comp, then you put it on the list. There's no reason for something to be open for 10 years when there is no case. So these are some of the stuff, and I'm not saying that city is doing a bad job, but there's some stuff in here that are not new. They're work in progress that I wish that had been progressed and done, but they haven't done. And so I'm hoping that the staff will deal with these. So as some of these things come up next year, I want to see more stuff that is different, and that's part of the audit's job, to find things. They don't go and audit from A to Z. They just pick and choose little places and do spot checks. But what I don't want to see for myself, I do not want to see this sentence says, this is a repeat condition. I don't like seeing that. What that tells me is staff was aware of it, but staff didn't do anything about it because the condition has been repeated. And I'm not saying that you can't make mistakes. You can make mistakes. There may be other issues they catch it, but let's not have this sentence again. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Well, I might as well let you have a zinger too, Ron. One of the questions I had, and I'm saying that facetiously, I think what I'd like is an explanation on the observations on the land held for resale. And apparently there's a problem in booking land that we had sold in the previous year, and it's still on the books. What is our, aside from the recommendation that there be better communication before the two departments, is there some sort of fail-safe or system of checks that'll make sure that if we do sell a piece of property, it's properly recorded and booked and removed from our ledgers as land, city-owned land?
Mr. Mayor, we have actually taken this one to heart as well, and we've set up some additional communications, if you will, between us and our Development Services Department so that we are in so that we know about when different land transactions take place. We obviously know about when we purchase land because we actually write the check in finance. So we have set up different meetings and different correspondence between the two departments so that we know. For example, we just deeded over some land to the Americana project, and we are in the process of booking those entries into our financial system. So we are implementing this comment by the external auditors.
And this was the first year that this comment was made, so hopefully next year, we don't want to disappoint the council and make sure that that's fully implemented and cleared up.
That is correct.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Draymond? No?
Just to follow up to something that Councilmember Yusefian was mentioning, what is the explanation for the lack of an explanation in the first item he was...
If you can remind me on which item that was, Councilmember Yusefian?
This was on the medical...
recurring issue.
The medical issue.
Medical premium, self-insurance account.
Okay.
The auditor said that they apparently asked for an explanation, and the staff had told them there's no explanation.
Right. What we need to provide is the actual reconciliation and to the external auditors, and that's what we are working on, and we have been working on for a number of months here with dealing with our database and also dealing with the medical insurance vendors that the city employs. So it's not just I can just talk to Kevin or to David and go, oh yeah, it's just this. I actually have to prove it to them with numbers on a spreadsheet or an official reconciliation between what Blue Cross gives us and then what our payroll database says the dollar amount is. So I can't just talk my way out of it. I actually have to prove it so that they have something to audit, and they can go back and go into our database and go, yeah, here's the number that Ron said on this one, here's the number on this, here's the other reconciling items. Okay, bing, you're done. So it's more of a proof than it is me just talking with them.
But it refers to it being a repeat issue or a recurring issue. So...
Again, this is what you're looking at is a report for June 30th, 06, and Councilmember Yusefian is absolutely correct. This was brought to our attention for the report for June 30th, 05. We received the management letter typically around the March timeframe, and so we had not implemented it within the 4 months that we had remaining in the fiscal year, March, April, May, and June, in order to get that done.
Ron, I understand what you're saying, but the difference is there is 100% increase, according to here. It says the balance of the account has increased by 100% over the last 2 years. Okay? So we paid those premiums, right?
Right.
Okay? So Blue Cross just didn't give it to us for free.
Nope.
So we must have some bills from Blue Cross that says, here's your premium increase, this is the reason.
Right.
Maybe, we all had surgery and had hair transplants or whatever. It would say that. So if it was like a 2% increase, a 3% increase, I would say the difference is small. It's very difficult to find it. You have to go through a lot of paperwork to find it. Now, we all know anecdotally that the medical insurance has gone up, and it's not just for the city, it's throughout the nation. But nevertheless, they send us a bill. We give it to finance, and you have a place that write the check. It goes through either the Treasury Department or through you. So you could say, here's the bill, here's the check. You have a problem, why it went up? Call Blue Cross. Or you can call Blue Cross. Somebody can call Blue Cross. I mean, that's where I'm having my problem. It's 100% increase.
That's why, Mr. Mayor, it might be useful before we get too far down this road to explain what this is. I'm not sure that Bob is on the right...
I'm reading this that you provided me.
I'm not sure Mr. Yusefian is on the right turnpike.
Right. Would you like to put that in context, Mr. Allers, and make sure that we're we're discussing this in the proper framework.
Keep grabbing. the
And if you're
wrong-
not, and let me say, if
Page
you're,
3.
Thank you.
if you're not able to this evening, I don't want to put you on the spot. We're more than
Come back
happy
later.
to allow you to come back after you can.
I'd just like to make sure we all know what we're talking about here, because I don't think it's what Ms. Yosefian thinks it is, so.
Right.
Just talking about the balance of the account has increased, not necessarily the premiums have increased, but the balance of the account in a self-insurance fund.
What
Yeah, balance of the account has increased by 100% over the last 2 years.
Right.
Thank you, Mr. Starbird. You're exactly right. It's not an increase in the amount that we pay Blue Cross. What this is the end-of-the-year balance. As of June 30th, '06, we owe Blue Cross for basically a month worth of premium that we have not paid yet. So
Okay.
it's a payable. It's an accounts payable.
Okay.
We owe Blue Cross.
And why
And
haven't
that-
we paid it?
It's a I hate to use the word timing difference, but we go through the month of June and we have X employees with Y dependents, number of dependents, and we owe a dollar amount to Blue Cross. We charge ourselves the premium for the city's share, and we also deduct from the employee's share. That sits off in an account, ready to pay the next bill that comes in from Blue Cross.
Okay.
The next bill from Blue Cross comes in the middle of July,
Okay.
and that's when we pay it. It's that account that we're talking about that had the increase. So it's the amount in the payable has increased 100%.
Okay. And to the auditor, was that explanation good enough for you, or it was not good enough? Well, that's what I'm trying to understand. I mean, if this is the explanation, I want to know from them if they accept that type of explanation or they don't.
Well, the issue is that we need to be able to reconcile that balance in that payable in our account to what we owe Blue Cross, and that's what they brought it up. They go, hey, wait a second, this has increased 100%, and that's what we've been working on is the actual reconciliation on why did it go up that much.
Okay.
What entries caused that to go up that much? They're pointing out that we most likely have a miscalculation or some kind of estimate error in the system for why this balance of the account went up.
Okay.
Real quick, I'll let David, he's the audit manager, he will give you the details as to specifically what this means, but I think one point that I wanted to make before David speaks is that we can be provided a rational explanation, but as Ron pointed out, we truly need, before we can say it's implemented, to see, do the numbers actually tick and tie and reconcile in order to make it implemented? So with that being said...
Before you go,
Yes.
when did you start this audit?
September.
That'd be the final. What about interim?
Interim was
For
in
06.
June.
June of 06.
Okay, and this letter went to them in March?
The letter was presented in January of
Okay.
07.
Okay, between June and January, 6 months, right? According to my math.
Correct.
Okay, in that 6 months, the staff was not able to reconcile those numbers and get you those numbers, or you just go in there, you look at it, and you just disappear off the face of the earth and write your letter and then submit it?
I believe, Ron, feel free to jump up, but the reconciliation process was going on as we were there, but it had not been completed by the time we were done. So it wasn't to the point that the city could have said, this is the explanation for the increase, and this is the proper balance in the account. Therefore, we brought it back as a repeat finding.
Right, but what I'm trying to understand what that timeline was.
That's not how that works, though.
Staff was reconciling something, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
They were throughout the process. They
Okay.
were working as we were there in the
Okay.
field.
2 months, let's say, 3 months. When you left, how long ago did you leave? Was it like a month? It took you a month to write this letter? 2 months to write the letter? I'm just trying to understand is, in that time that took you to write this letter,
Right.
did the staff call you back and say, we have done the work and this is what it is? No. Okay. because staff you had not done it. You were unable to reconcile it.
Correct.
Okay, got that.
Well,
That's it.
Need to come up. If I can ask another question, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Sarber.
The nature of what we're reconciling here and the numbers of people that we're trying to reconcile and the various changes that can occur in the family unit and the people that are covered. Can you give an explanation of that? Because it sounds like a rather simple task, but it's not a particularly simple task as I understand it.
No, it isn't. With just the normal changes that we have month to month, we have dozens of changes in our health care accounts from just every month. We just have dozens because of new hires and employees rolling off, as well as dependents coming on and off, depending on births, deaths, divorces, marriages, and so forth, all the major life events. And then you throw into their open enrollment every year, which hits the January timeframe, and then there's hundreds that are going on in January as well. So there are a lot of transactions just constantly being inputted into the system every month.
And if I can, I think the problem that was pointed out here is that if you're not doing this reconciliation and tearing into the whole population all the detail on at least a quarterly basis, then this whole host of changes, when you do get around to doing it, there are so many changes in the population that it's a rather large task to go in and reconcile all of the detailed changes with the resulting fund balance that you have, whether you owe something or whether you don't. And so I think what's being pointed out here in the recommendation was you should be doing it on a periodic basis so the effort isn't so big when you finally get around to it that it's having to take you, because remember, they're also doing a lot of other stuff, that you're not having to go back and do a whole year at a time, because it is a tremendous number of changes for a lot of people, and they can be as small as a dependent came off, or I was single and I got married. And so what they owe us has changed, but they've got to go in and reconcile what they're showing as their payments on the books with all those detailed changes so they can prove to the auditors this is why this number has changed.
So if they do it on quarterly basis?
If they do it on a quarterly basis, then that's much easier every time they go in and make that change.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think that's the gist of the recommendation. So it's not a sense of there is any inappropriate numbers or something is missing. Their suggestion is, it's a big task. You shouldn't do it on an annual basis or, frankly, wait till the audit. You should be doing it quarterly so it's not such a big task.
Mr. Yousefi.
Move 5B1.
Second.
And this, for those following us, this is a motion accepting the management letter, June 20th, 2006, from Vavrnik, Trine, Day and Company. A motion and a second. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Council members Draymond,
Yes.
Quintero,
Yes.
Weaver, Yusefian,
Aye.
Mayor Najarian.
Yes. Next item, please.
5C is Director of Parks, Recreation, and Community Services regarding Americans with Disabilities Act accessibility study. At C1 is resolution appropriating $112,470. At C2 is motion awarding a contract to Disability Consultants, Inc. in the amount of $97,800 plus a 15% contingency of $14,670 and authorizing the city manager to enter into contract.
We have a motion.
I'll move it.
Is there a second?
Second.
I do have two cards from the public. Bonnie Adams.
Three minutes.
Right. 3 minutes.
3 minutes. I'm kind of angry about this. My feeling is, if somebody does one more accessibility study or on something, I'm going to scream. You have done a lot of this work. I don't even know who Disability Consultants, Inc. Whatever. I really think before you put out this money to do anything, I think somebody brought up a good point, and that is the fact that instead of, you need the audits, I understand that, but you also need efficiency people to come in. You need efficiency people to come in and tighten this miscommunication between the different departments up somehow.
there are efficiency experts that can really do this, and I really think before you get yourself in the middle of something that you don't even know what you're getting in the middle of, you just get your efficiency experts and get your organizations down first, and then go for the money. I mean, if we're talking about contracts, use the resources you have in the city. I'll give you an example. I'm not good at this, but I'm going to do this. I need $8,000 to buy a piece of equipment to die for. That would make my life a lot easier. And if the city of Glendale would issue this kind of equipment that people ask for and work it out so they do some research and can do some stuff that can help the city, then work off the loan, or they make some arrangements to get the loan paid back, that's fair. I'm not asking for charity, but I sure enough don't have the $8,000 to do it. And when I saw that machine this year, I was drooling. It does so much. It just takes a computer and blows it away. Absolutely. And it just has so much, But I think you really have to. And, Mayor Najarian, I was wondering if I could speak in oral communications. I didn't fill out a card because I didn't think these things were going to come up, but if I don't, I'll do it next week. That's okay, because I know this has gotten long and involved here.
Well, you're certainly entitled to speak at oral communications, Vani, so
Okay,
we'll accept your card.
Huh?
We'll accept your card for oral communications as soon as we get to that.
It wasn't filled out, but I didn't fill it out. I just filled out for another one for 8B or something, another one. But thanks a lot. I really, it would be interesting. And whatever happened, I'll ask you in oral communications.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Dr. Richard Espiritu.
Once again, good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council, and staff. I am Dr. Richard Espiritu. One of the things that I would like to thank is Mr. Chapshin for filling out such a beautiful report. However, Mr. Chapshin, the next time you submit a report to the City Council and to the City Clerk's office, would you please make sure that your exhibits are attached? I can't find the exhibits online, and one of the interesting things is one of the exhibits talks about the scope of service that's supposed to be provided by this company. I would like to know what the scope of service is and what they're doing. In 1994, I don't know if anybody remembers this study that was done in 1994, a site survey. It was May 16th, 1994. I was wondering if this report is going to wind up the same way the last report did, laying in some dark, dingy dungeon until some terrorist gadfly comes along and shakes the City Council's cage. The other thing that I'd like to know is this is supposed to address all the other contracts with disability people. Is this all going to address the issue of the contracts with the parks that I had raised previously, where people had lied on the agreements because of the fact they could not be disabled if they were taking painting classes or things of that nature? Remember that. The other question, what is an appropriate timeline to implement these things? This law of ADA went into effect in January of 1992. The other question is, when will this report be done, and will it be completed by August of this year? Several different reports talked about a transition plan. The first time it was mentioned in a transition plan was a report that was provided by Mr. Rick Fall in April 18th, 2006. I'd like to know if there's when that transition plan will be implemented, because it talks about it in this report. And if there is one, I'd like to put in a California Public Information request to have this one, and will these studies be provided in a timely and appropriate manner? I did it in less than 3 minutes, even though you guys took up my time before. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Well, I think one of the questions is what happened to Dr. Spiritu's exhibits?
Or ours.
Mayor Najarian and members of the council, I apologize. We had submitted those with the report. We'll have to look into where the attachments were. We do have some extra copies, but our apologies.
Will you please make sure that they're available to Dr. Spiritu as soon as
Absolutely.
As soon as you locate
Our
them?
staff person has some
Can
copies.
you put Mr. Kasakian under oath? Perhaps he's got the exhibits.
They weren't submitted to us.
Okay, yeah. And the other question, just to reiterate, are we sure that this report will be completed by August of this year?
We are holding the consultant's feet to the fire on this. She understands. Barbara is out here. Barbara, if you wouldn't mind coming up. That's a deliverable, and that's the date, so we plan on having it on that date. She's taken a good, hard look at what the deliverables are, and she's done this before, has done many, many studies in other cities. So my assumption is she will be able to deliver. If you want, you can hear from Barbara.
And let me just ask a question, then I'll take it from my colleagues. And can you give us the scope of the facilities that will be inspected and evaluated for ADA?
We are going to be looking at all of our parks, all our park facilities. All the parks, all the ARC, all the physical facilities that we have as a Parks Department, in addition to all the program services and special events that the city has, all the departments have. That's what Barbara will be looking at.
Okay, so Cruise Night, you'd look and see if there's appropriate ADA
Cruise Night,
accommodation.
Unity Fest, Cesar Chavez, all of the events that we do, all the special events. She's going to be looking at all our contract classes, whether or not there are barriers to our people signing up to our contract classes as well. GWP services, public works services, anybody that has public services, Barbara's going to be looking at that.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Yusefian?
Actually, one of my questions was going to be to ask either him or Barbara to let me know what the consultant's proposal was, what they were going to do, but you pretty much covered that in your statements. And so I would appreciate it, because I was going to vote no on this, because I didn't know what it was, what you were going to do. I know there's a staff report, but I actually like to see what consultant is saying that they're going to do, because sometimes you can't include all of those things. I'm not as interested on the sample professional services agreement, because just an agreement to an extent, unless in some issues I'd like to see the agreement, because there are certain contractual items in there. But that was my issue.
Thank you. So we have a motion and a second, and if...
Would you like to hear about the timeline, whether or not she's going to be able to deliver? Okay. My assumption is...
I think we're going on your assertion that you're going to hold her feet to the fire. That's on the record, and we won't delay this contract. So if there's no further questions... Mr. Mayor? Yes, Mr. Yusefian.
One other thing, unrelated, and I would like to say that I don't think it's appropriate for the speaker, earlier speaker, Mr. Spiritu, to talk about him as a terrorist gadfly. I don't think that is appropriate. I don't think that's who he is. I don't like that comment continually being made, because if some people look at it outside of the context, they may not think those two words, I think I found one very derogatory, even if he is talking jokingly about himself. And terrorist is not a very nice word to be used lightly either. So I would appreciate it if he didn't say that, even for himself. We don't think of him that way, and I would appreciate it if he does not mention that over and over again, because then some people watching this program are going to get that perception that maybe that's how we think of him, but in reality, we don't, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I think of Dr. Espiritu as a zealous community activist. Therefore, we have a motion and a second, and with no further comments or discussion, roll call, please.
Council members Draymond.
Yes.
Quintero. Yes. Weaver. Yusefian.
Aye.
Mayor Najarian.
Yes. Thank you. The next item.
Next item is oral communication. Discussion is limited to items not a part of this agenda. Each speaker is allowed 5 minutes. Council may question or respond to a speaker, but there will be no debate or decision. City manager may refer the matter to the appropriate department for investigation and report.
Thank you. The first speaker is John Kima. Mr. Kima? Okay, in case he stepped out. The next speaker is our zealous community activist, Dr. Richard Espiritu.
Mr. Yusefian, those terms were applied to me directly by the Glendale Police Department.
Oh, I'm
On
sorry.
2 different occasions.
I think that is inappropriate.
Well, that's okay.
I agree.
Mr. Mayor, City Council and staff, I am Dr. Richard Espiritu. I am greatly disappointed with you, Mr. Mayor, with your comments of last week. During the past 5 years, I've appeared numerous times here at City Council. For some reason, you failed to mention my name when you were talking about the other people who appear here at City Council. That's a trivial thing. With regards to the beeline, I need to make a couple of statements. Number one, last week I wore the colors of the Teamsters. I am not a Teamster, have not been a Teamster, and if I wear the colors of the Teamsters, that was because that was a gift to me. If I happen to have a friend of mine who happens to be Arabic, happens to be a Muslim, that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm hiding in some cave in Afghanistan. I am here in front of City Council all the time. If anybody ever wants to contact me, Mr. Kasakian, number of the members of the City Council, the City Attorney's Office, the Glendale Police Department have my numbers. I am not unavailable. I also would like to say that I truly believe that in the 12th month of this contract with the Beeline, we should put this thing up for contract, for request for new bids. Okay? I also wish that this contract would hurry up and be signed by the city, by MV Transportation, so that the Beeline drivers who work many hours taking care of our people here in the city of Glendale can get their just rewards and their increase in salary. MV Transportation and the Department of Transportation contacted the Teamsters and wanted to know why I was wearing their colors. If anybody wants to get a hold of me, you can get a hold of me. Pick up the phone. I have a cell phone. I have email addresses. I have home phones. Anybody can get a hold of me. One of the other things that I'd like to address is this contract with the Beeline. Why did not it appear before the Transportation and Parking Commission? Maybe because the Transportation and Parking Commission had not held its meeting in 7 of the last 12 months. In December, it was closed. I found that out online looking at the agendas for the Transportation and Parking Commission. Mr. Mayor used to be on that commission. I know you believe that's a very important commission because you served on it for a number of years. Also, Armand who was on that commission since its inception, was the individual who taught me how to look at these things. I'm wearing the colors of purple and white tonight because those are the same colors that Mayor Antonio Villaraigosa wore so proudly a number of years ago. These are my numbers, and if I wear other colors, which I will in the future, and when I wear the colors of the NSA, don't ask me if I belong to the NSA, because I won't be able to answer that question, okay? Legally, and if I did answer, you may disappear off the face of the earth. But I will wear other colors, so please, gentlemen, if you want to get a hold of me, you want to find out how I know what's going on with the beelines, if Mr. Howard's office would be kind enough to contact me, I'd be more than happy to sit down with his office if there is a subpoena to find out how I find out the information. But I will tell you one thing right now. It is not from the drivers. Drivers do not pick up the phone and call me and say, oh, the number 65 number bus is down at GTC, or it's down at JPL. I have my own sources, and if somebody wants to find out, one day I'll wear the colors of the 101st Airborne. Maybe somebody will be able to figure it out. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Espiritu. The next speaker is Helen McDonough from Massage Envy.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council members. I'm here on the suggestion of Linda Patrick, very last minute, to let you know and let the residents of the City of Glendale know that we are, next Tuesday, May 1st, is Paint the Town Purple Day, and a lot of the businesses on Brand Boulevard will be participating in that event. And Massage Envy Glendale will be donating 250 half-hour gift certificates to the Glendale Relay for Life, and we would like for the residents of Glendale to come by and purchase these so that we can end up donating about $5,000 to the Glendale Relay for Life. So it's Paint the Town Purple Day. It's Massage Envy's corporate color, and I felt like we had to get out and do something. So thank you for your time.
And where can the public obtain these? Is this at the kickoff event?
No, it will be next Tuesday, May 1st, from 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. They'll be available for purchase at Massage Envy Glendale.
Which is located?
Which is located at 333 North Brand Boulevard between California and Lexington. And I'm happy to say there are signs now that point to the parking at the Orange Street Garage, which I'm very happy about. And we will continue the event on Tuesday night from 6 to 8. We'll also have a table at the Alex Theatre at 216 North Brand Boulevard. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Herbert Milano.
Good evening, Mayor Najarian, members of the City Council, the City staff. My name is Herbert Milano. I came here to on a couple of observations. The first one is to thank the city for and to you and your co-chair on yesterday's program. I think it was a program done to excellence. It was truly a fantastic program at the Alex. It was incredibly enjoyable, and the music was absolutely fantastic. I would gladly would have paid to attend such a program, and the fact that it was free and was so inclusive, and I thought it was so very special to have included as well the topics of the Holocaust as well, and the other genocides that we have had throughout the past 100 or so years. But I just thought that a lot of people who may have not gone and who missed it, this program was just absolutely beautiful program. I thought that the public got to know, and the level of effort that you and Mr. Youssefin have put into this thing, I think it was truly marvelous program. So I came out of that place really thrilled.
Thank you, Mr. Milano.
The other reason I came here today is to thank Mr. Steve Zern. I know I often from time to time I come in to criticize, usually about top level issues, but I've had an issue for a long time having to do with our curbs crumbling, and I decided to do a methodical process of making the request, receiving an order number confirmation, sending the information by email, doing the follow-up. And your staff out there basically went out, took a look at the problem, took care of it in very good order, and resolved the problem in an incredibly effective and competent manner. I just thought I'd, come forward and know that your people are doing the job that they set out to do, and they do it gladly. And the response to me was, very welcoming and very professional. And I just needed to know that. I guess if we follow our processes and do it methodically and make it very clear, things flow fairly smoothly, and I really appreciate that. That's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Milano. Norbert Stile. Mr. Stile has left. Nancy Kent.
Hello, my name is Nancy Kent. I'm a resident of Glendale. Mayor Najarian and council members, staff, and others, I would like to invite you to a free film screening this Saturday, April 28th, 2 p.m. at the Montrose Library, 2465 Honolulu. The Glendale Public Awareness About 9/11 is screening 1 hour of a 6.5-hour DVD called 9/11 Citizens Commission, an open inquiry into the attacks of September 11th. This inquiry was held in New York in 2004, chaired by former Congresswoman Cynthia McKinney. This segment includes Indira Singh, who was a corporate security consultant working for J.P. Morgan Chase in New York on 9/11, speaking about an artificial intelligence software company called P-Tech, a company that has contracts with many U.S. government agencies such as the Department of Defense, but also has links to terrorists and illegal drug deals. Indira Singh also reads a letter written by FBI whistleblower Sibel Edmonds. This part of the DVD also features Michael Rupert speaking about the inability of our federal government to account for the theft of trillions of tax dollars. We do not expect any guest speakers. For more information, call 818-242-4320. Once again, that's the Montrose Library this Saturday, April 28th, 2 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you. Bonnie Adams.
Well, soon you'll all see a dog walking me up to the podium. Word is I have either a late September or a late October date to go into class for the new pup, and so he or she will become part of the family, and it'll do its work and do everything. I would like to know, somebody, and I don't know who it was, and I honestly can't remember, brought up the idea of having a disabled person sit on the council. Just sit on the council. I did not be elected necessarily, but sit on the council so that they could bring reports back to the other consumers and maybe give information as to and give input to you boys about what the disabled community is doing and how even the rest of the country is handling things, and how some other people have ideas that might work here. I also think there might be a committee or a subcommittee formed somehow to get some organization and ideas up to the state, whether it's to the council, whether it's organizing things in such a way that they're on databases that can be, easier number crunching, easier department communications between each other. Also, Mr. Chapson, I would like to have the catalog of classes that the Parks and Recreation Department offers in Braille. That the Braille printer is in the city clerk's office, if that's possible. I don't know anything about Parks and Rec. That is really something I'm ignorant on, but I would like a catalog done. So if you could give it to Artie or Anna Maria or somebody, that would be great. I would really appreciate that. That would be great. Mayor Najarian, we had a meeting not too long ago in your office about access and about what the fare increases were on the MTA buses were going to be. You're going to talk people right out of going anywhere. They're going to have to choose between getting their medication, getting their food, or riding a bus. I don't know what the MTA is doing, but they're crazy. And if you raise your fares, Access is going to raise their fares, because that's what happens. So I just want you to be aware of the fact that it's the fare increases are despicable. They aren't going to work for a lot of people, and you're going to see unemployment going up around here really fast. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Bonnie. Next speaker is Jane Brown.
Good evening, Mayor Najarian, council members. My name is Jane Brown, and I'm here speaking as a resident of Adams Hill and on behalf of the Adams Hill Homeowners Association. Unfortunately, our association's general meeting was also scheduled for tonight, so most of my neighbors that would be here are not here. They've asked me to speak to you tonight about the Adams Square Mini Park. First, I would like to emphasize how pleased we are with the street and revitalization projects in Adams Square. We're also very happy to see that the mini park is actually coming along. However, as it progresses, it's clear there have been significant changes made to the plans since the neighborhood last saw them. And you'll remember that those plans were the result of 2 community outreach meetings and subsequent Parks and Recreational Commission meetings, and final council meeting when the plans were approved. We have some valid concerns about those particular changes and would like to have them addressed before the park construction is completed. At the August 16, 2005 City Council meeting, the proposed Adams Square Mini Park project plan was unanimously approved. And the concept of the park included the following elements. Quote, open lawn area for informal recreational activities and yard games, end of quote. We'd like to note that the grassy area has become a sea of concrete sidewalks and tables. As you know, there's a dearth of green space in South Glendale. What happened to the grass, and how do we get it back? Also approved, quote, play area providing activities oriented to younger children, end of quote. There is no mention of play area for older children. So what had been a tot lot, a play area for small children, has become 2 distinct play areas for tots and for older children. One with large equipment that's taller than the preserved gas station, a gas station that was to be the focal point of the park. Also, the equipment is dangerous for small children. You don't want tots climbing a 10-foot structure. That's injuries just waiting to happen. And if the thinking was the bigger kids ought to be given park equipment, it's forgetting that there's plenty of large play equipment in Palmer Park, which is just a walk away. And another element that was approved, quote, picnic picnic benches and seating to accommodate socialization. The benches have been replaced with tables. And because there are many tables, there's a lot of concrete. The very limited space of this mini park cannot be all things to all people, but it seems that it's being attempted, cramming in tables and concrete and play equipment. The result is a park that's not going to work for anybody. Some of you have received emails and letters concerning these issues, and last week 11 of us from the neighborhood met with Mr. Chappian and Mr. Kasabian from Parks and Recreation to voice our concerns, and we're told that the changes that have been made came from City Council. We're not sure when those changes took place, but it wasn't at the August 16, 2005 meeting. Though Mr. Chappian and Mr. Kasabian were very kind and they listened to all of our concerns, at the end of the day, only City Council can approve necessary changes. I'm here to let you know that the neighborhood isn't happy with the current direction the park development is taking, and ask you to please take a look and help us remedy the situation. I encourage you to visit the Adams Hill website, adamshill.org, and look at our message board. There you'll find over 25 comments posted opposing the changes to the park plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Ray Galloway.
Mr. Mayor, City Council, friends, I'm glad to hear that there's a meeting at the Adams Hill. I was a little bit concerned about our illustrious Margaret, who hasn't showed up tonight, and I thought we were in uncharted waters, but I guess everything's all well. I just wanted to point out...
Name for the record.
I'm sorry. Oh, yes, my name is Ray Galloway. I just wanted to point out that the prestigious organization LA Conservancy is recognizing the city of Glendale on the 10th of March for their good work dealing with historical districting.
10th of May?
10th of May. Did I say March? The 10th of May. And I would like to compliment the council and everybody that was involved with that, because it was a long and tedious process, as we all know, and a lot of hard work went into it, and I think we're pleased with the product. I would hope that in the near future I'll be able to stand up and say the same thing about the ordinance dealing with intrusive structures. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Galloway. My last card is from Leon Meyer.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the staff, members of the City Council, Mr. Starberg, Mr. McFall. Leon Mayer is my name. I'm a resident of Glendale, and I'm here as the chairman of the Author, Artists, and Friends series, which is put on by the Friends of the Glendale Public Library in conjunction with the Glendale Public Library. And I'm pleased to tell you that last week we had a Sudanese survivor of the Sudanese genocide at the library, talking about a book he helped write, and we had him introduced by Father Voskin, who some of you know from the St. Peter Armenian Church, who I understand was there last night at the program you had. Now, we're finishing up Library Week and Poetry Week. We had last Saturday, 70 people showed up when Carolyn Johnson put on her poetry workshop at the library Saturday morning. 70 people, mothers, fathers, young children, young adults, and she's been around for a long time. She's from the Chevy Chase area. She's been an activist in this community, and it was a pleasure when I presented two of her young adults with certificates of appreciation from the local assemblyman for their achievement in poetry and in the arts. Now, this Sunday we have one more poetry event. Bart Edelman, Glendale College professor, who's been around for years. He's a figure in the field of poetry. He's written his latest collection of poems is called The Last Mojito, M-O-J-I-T-O. Did I mispronounce that, Mr. Quintero?
That's right.
Right on, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, and he's been active in the field of poetry. He has 5 published volumes of poetry, and I know everybody's not going to stream to the library Sunday at 2 o'clock to hear him, but I wanted to mention him. If anybody is at all interested, please come. And I thought this might be an appropriate time to mention to those who might not be aware of it, the Friends of the Library, through this program that I chair, we bring authors from all over the world, all over the country, with diverse books. Some are entertaining, some are challenging, some are historical, but we get a hold of them and we bring them. And I'd like to take a quick look ahead to May and June. Now, in May, we're going to have a person, Jonathan Kirsch. He's been a book reviewer for 30 years for the Los Angeles Times, and he is a noted authority on religious history. And the book that he has just written recently is The History of the End of the World. And this is how the most controversial, the book is about how the most controversial story of the Bible was, how the most controversial book in the Bible changed the course of Western civilization. Now, Jonathan Kirsch has written, author 10 books. 6 of them are religious history, and he's a historian. And this book will take us from early Christianity right through the present time, talking about how Revelation, that's the book he's talking about, the book of Revelation, has entered into the culture wars of Western civilization. I'm not going to take too much more time to talk about that. I have a flyer for everybody on that particular event, and we're going to have, there's flyers at all the branch libraries in City Hall and at the main library for anybody who's interested. Now, that is May 16th, 7 o'clock at the library, and if I can make one other preview of our June 23rd event, that's Saturday morning, 10 o'clock at the library. I'll be brief with this. John Ziegler is a radio talk host for KFI. Everybody who listens to the radio has heard of him. He's frankly a conservative talk show host. And he's written a book entitled The Death of Free Speech, How Our Broken National Dialogue Has Killed the Truth and Has Divided America. And that will be a challenging book, and that will be a challenge for people to come and ask questions and hear what he has to say and have your say there at the library as well. And he has been a radio and TV commentator in the South, in the East, and for many years for KFI, and I think he's a resident of Burbank. So we're going to be glad to have him here as well. And I don't have any flyers yet for that event, but we certainly urge you to think about the May 16th event and the June 23rd event, and Bart Edelman, who will be here at the library 2 o'clock Sunday. Thank you very much.
That concludes oral communications, and now we'll go to City Council and staff comments. Mr. Yusefian.
Mr. Mayor, let me start on a positive note. As of yesterday's event, I'd like to thank all the committee members that worked so diligently and so hard to put that event together. All the artists, especially Artists for Kids, that did the event, and speakers, both speakers and also the 3 young people who walked from here to Washington and their program. And most of all, I'd like to thank you for your speech. It was very moving, was very pertinent, was direct, and I am sorry that we brought some tears to your eyes. But I thought that you were very open and honest, and we actually saw our Nigerian unplugged, as they say. So thank you very much. The other thing that I want to ask Mr. Zern is the issue of the TPC not having meetings for 7 months. That was brought to my attention a while back, and my automatic assumption was there is nothing on the agenda for them to discuss. That's why they're not there. Is it because of that, or if there's a lack of quorum? Which one?
No, Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Yusefian, it has been a lack of material to present to them. I believe we've had one special meeting in that period to talk about the mobility plan and make that presentation to them, so we have met once. But we are concerned about the quorum, I will tell you that, because we are thin, but it's been that we don't have anything to bring before them. At this time.
Well, one of the items that I think we have been dealing with in the past, which deals with the car neighborhood, and that has to do with some of the whether we make it one side, two-sided, or parking restrictions on one side. That may be one of the items that maybe could be deferred to them, and so this way the neighborhood could go there and have this dialogue, because I keep getting emails of what the school district is willing to do and what some of the speakers say in here, and it's not the same as what the neighborhood wants. So I think that gives them a good forum to go and talk about what is it that they want and what is it that they don't want. So when it comes to us, some of that issue has been resolved at the TPC. Just a suggestion. So the other thing that I also have been getting a lot of emails. I got several of them last week, and I got another 8 or so this week, and that has to do with people who are sending me. Apparently, an email has been prepared. It's just a typical standard email with people having different names on the bottom of them, and deals with more soccer fields. And I think that's something that we need to discuss. This was an issue that was brought up during the election cycle. This is an issue that was brought up in the past. This is something that we're going to have to deal with in this city. There are 3,000 soccer players, and we have 2 dedicated fields. And based on some of the emails I have read, which I did not know, is there are certain requirements according to our own recreation element, which basically we are shy by a large number of soccer field that our recreation element basically says we need to have. So that is one item that we need to deal with, Mr. Manager. I would like to put it on the agenda sometime in our to-do list so we can discuss this. On the other item is Adams Hill Mini Park. I have received several emails on this item in the last few weeks. I can tell you that I did talk to the city manager and also staff, whether or not there was a change. My understanding from staff is there has not been change. What we approved is what has been built. So my recommendation to staff is I would respectfully ask that either the city clerk or our PIO provide us the DVD from that meeting that we actually gave staff directions. I would like to see that section, and maybe we can schedule it and put that little section and replay it. So some people have a tendency to sometimes forget what happens at the council meeting, or some people have difficulty visualizing what something would look like because they look at a piece of document. It's a flat piece of document. We do not do perspectives for parks. maybe we need to deal with that in future as we build these mini parks, to deal with a perspective drawing so the public can envision what a park is going to look like, how big the equipment are going to be. But my understanding is, from the details that the city staff has provided me, what we have approved is what's being built. Now, there may be some issues as far as colors. I got some issues about the colors they don't like. Some think that the blue is too ugly. Some think that yellow is better. Somebody wants red. But the bottom line is, my question to staff was, are these the colors that the council approved? And every time I talk to them, they give me the same answer, which is yes. So I like to have that also dealt with, because we are getting a lot of this emails. And that's it, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Quintero.
I want to congratulate the committee, the Genocide Committee. I think it was a wonderful presentation last night, and unlike the year before, all of the seats were pretty well taken. I would have liked to have seen more non-Armenians attend, but hopefully we'll be able to do that in the next year. But all in all, it was a great intellectual presentation. The music was moving, and I thought it was an excellent event. In terms of Adams Square, I took the time to go by there this afternoon, and I personally think that some of the items there need to be refined. I think the layout isn't quite what I had in mind, so I don't think it's going to be particularly costly to move some items around or delete, et cetera. So hopefully the staff will be able to come up with a plan. Like any project, it looks one way on paper, but eventually, no matter what it is, you always have some changes that you do. And like I say, I don't think they'll be particularly costly, but all in all, that park's going to be great. It's a super wonderful addition to the neighborhood, so I'm looking forward to its completion, and I think everyone is really going to enjoy that space.
Thank you, Mr. Quintero. Mr. Draymond.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to add my congratulations to both you and Councilmember Yusefian. It was a terrific program. It was terrific. Enjoyed it very much. It was moving and enlightening, and as someone who is not a part of the Armenian community, I learned a great deal, even though I have attended these events before. It was great. It was also nice to see the Alex nearly full. So thank you for your work on that, and the committee as well. That is not an easy event to produce, I know that. Another thing I wanted to mention was in Montrose Shopping Park, the Art Walk, which is produced by the Montrose Verdugo City Chamber of Commerce, and I believe that is this Saturday. I invite you to come. And while I'm in the Montrose Shopping Park, I wanted to ask what, if we know, the status is of the discussion of the landscaping from last year, early last year. I know that it was in process, a design was forthcoming, but I think it may have been lost in the shuffle due to weather and other considerations, scheduling and so on. But I would like to try to get that back on schedule. Couple of other things. I also want to address the issue of the Adams Square mini park. I also was out there. I also received a lot of emails, but I was hearing about this as far back as a couple of months ago, actually. And I did go out there over the weekend, the end of the weekend, Sunday, actually, to take a look. Let's remember that the point of this, at least from the community standpoint, I can't speak for the council, I wasn't here then, but very clearly the intention of the community was that we were creating an outdoor gathering area for Adams Square, Adams Hill, that centered around an historic element, being that gas station. And the structure that's out there eclipses that station. That is the focal point. And remember that sometimes, and I can say this from being on the outside, prior to coming here and working with city on certain physical projects, particularly in the shopping park and physical improvements, to add to the list that my colleague, Mr. Yusefian, was referring to. Sometimes there are misunderstandings on the part of the public. Sometimes certain terminology is misunderstood or a flat design is not interpreted correctly. But also sometimes the city misunderstands the intention of the public as well. And it's possible that that has occurred. So I would endorse another look at that. The point is less important to me as to whether it was executed in the way the council at the time put the idea forward, as whether or not it is right. And if it isn't right, it isn't right. Palmer Park is, just as the speaker was saying, just a stone's throw away, and it does have all of the elements for children and so on. But this is meant, at least from the community's view, to be a gathering point, a gathering place in an historic setting for that community. So I would like to take another look at that, if possible, and start by finding out just the information that my colleagues here have requested. Lastly, when I was giving my thank you speech here on the reorganization meeting, I was talking to you about a project that former council member Rafi Manoukian and I had been talking about for some time, which was something equivalent to A Day in the Life of Glendale. And if you're unfamiliar with that project, not necessarily A Day in the Life of Glendale, but if you're not familiar with that series of books, they are pictorial overviews of various cities that are conducted by taking one day in the life of a city, sending photographers out into the city on a given day, and in a 24-hour period, those photographers, whether they be professionals, amateurs, etc., students, capture visually what they believe represents the city to them. And I'm very interested in seeing this project occur. The idea was to produce a compilation of photographs that represent Glendale to the many photographers who live in the city. As I say, professional, non-professional, students, to have this body adjudicate those photographs in terms of what will be included in this project, to have it bound and sold to benefit the Glendale Library. I would like to ask that this project not become a project that is then turned over to some other group. I'd like to see this organization, this body, oversee that project, to send the direct message to the public that this council is taking steps to start to bring a variety of diverse elements and ethnicities within this city under one umbrella that says Glendale. And that's what this book would seek to do. It's symbolic, yes, but I'd like to do that, and I think it will benefit the library, and it's going to be a great project. So, since I'm the newcomer here and have the least experience, perhaps I need a little guidance as to how to get the ball rolling here, but I would like to start with that project in terms of getting staff together on that.
City Manager.
Mr. City Manager, the fingers are being pointed at you.
Well, actually, Mr. Draymond, the first step would be to ask for the matter to be placed on the agenda.
Mr. Mayor.
We can't receive direction here this evening, but we can at a subsequent meeting.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to place that on the agenda, please.
As long as I have no objection from my colleagues, we should be able to do that without a problem. Mr. Quintero.
Quite the opposite. I agree. We did that at the Chamber of Commerce years ago. It was very, very successful, very interesting, and if I remember correctly, we sold out all of the books.
Yeah, definitely. Good idea.
Okay, we'll place that on our future agendas at the appropriate time.
Well, we'll bring it back fairly quickly just to get a sense of what's desired. And
narrow the scope,
then we can
and the
narrow the
focus.
scope and then bring you back more information.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I just have a few comments. Some good news for us, Mr. Chapchin, on the lights at Stengel Field. Can you come forward? Give us a brief history. I understand there was some dangerous condition discovered, and take it from there.
Mayor Najarian, members of the City Council, there were three parks, Dunsmore Park, Palanconey, and Babe Herman Park, where as you recall, the light standards were rotted from within, from inside, because they had been placed in a sleeve in the ground. Our completion date for replacement of those was next month, end of next month, but the project manager really did a great job on it. Took that project, kind of put everything else on the side burner, and ended up, he will finish it in a week, I think. One of the fields, Babe Herman, is already up and they're playing. The kids are playing. So his charge was get this thing going as quickly as possible so that the 3,000 kids who play Little League aren't affected or mitigate the impact on those kids. So it's up. So real good news. My hat's off to the project manager.
And who is that gentleman?
Shahin Begumian.
Very good.
And Shahin's the gentleman who's working on Cerritos, and he's also the gentleman that did the artificial turf project up at the sports complex. Finished that in time, within budget, so he's really one of the stars.
Extend our congratulations to Mr.
Thank you. We'll do that.
Can we have him do the landscaping on Montrose?
Yeah. He has a number of projects.
Right away.
He has a number of projects. We really lean on him.
Thank you, Mr. Chapchin. That's my first item. My second item, I'm going to go back. I don't know who I should direct this to. Obviously, we're all concerned with the issue of speeding in Glendale. And what I would like to do would be to have a report from presumably the police department or in conjunction with Public Works and the Transportation Department on the measures available to prohibit speeding and to catch speeders, deter speeders, both the human element involving the police enforcement, police staffing. I know we were short some motorcycle officers. I'd like to know if we're up to full capacity with them. Speeding detection technology, what are we currently using, whether it's radar, laser. We have the, and please, Mr. Starbird, let's go through the whole gamut. The radar signs that we voted on not too long ago, the radar trailers, if they're still available, the traffic calming toolkit, if we can just have a brief review of that. There was some discussion or some word out that we may also use some aerial enforcement on certain parts of the city. I'd like to be brought up to speed, no pun intended, on that. We've heard some complaints from the folks on Alameda. Mr. Messett, Jack Messett, has raised the issue several times. And it's good for us to know as a council and for the public to know what available remedies there are, whether it's contacting the police, traffic calming, streetway design, et cetera. So I think that would be a very pertinent and timely issue for all of us in the city. We've had some terrible accidents lately with some young drivers involving speed, and hopefully we can get the word out and let everyone know that we are enforcing, we are doing our best to stop speeding and save some lives. Dr. Spiritu, speaking for myself, I never misunderstood you as being a representative of the Teamsters. I certainly understand that you're a supporter of them and the drivers, so no misunderstanding on my part. And we know how to get you when we know how to reach you when the time is necessary. The genocide event was a very excellent event this year. Thanks to everyone that did the hard work, Mr. Yusefian, everyone on the committee. And for those of you that missed it, I understand we're going to be showing replays on Channel 6. Is that correct, Mr. McFall? Really a moving event, so I'm glad that the community supported it. Bonnie, as far as the MTA fare increases are concerned, we're having a special meeting in May to discuss that. There are only proposals out there. I have not made up my mind. I'm certainly listening to all the stakeholders who are, most folks are strongly against a fare increase. However, I'll take that into consideration when we go into the meeting and make a final decision. Adams Square, I did accompany Mr. Quintero and City Manager Starbird this afternoon to look at it, and it's a beautiful park. Certainly a lot of work has gone into the landscaping. There are some beautiful sycamores there, a lot of attention to the ergonomics and the comfort. Not to say that it can't be tweaked and whether or not it's what we agreed to months ago, I think we certainly should be able to discuss it, and if we need to make some adjustments, I'd be certainly willing to look at that again to make sure that it's what the neighborhood wants. They've waited a long time. They fought several battles for that. So before everything is laid permanently into concrete, maybe now we can make some adjustments. But it was a fine. It looks like it's coming along very nicely, and I'm sure that the neighborhood is going to enjoy that. Now all they need is a sandwich shop in the area. We were caught down there about 5:30 looking for a quick bite to eat, and we had to run up to Broadway to Mario's to grab something to eat. So certainly turning into a vibrant core of the southern part of the city, right at the doorstep of Adams Hill. And that's it. Mr. Yusefian.
Mr. Mayor, glad you brought up the issue of speeding, and my question from Steve Zern is, a while back, previous council voted to move forward with red light cameras. At the time, you said that it will take 8 months to get this done. Is there any way to expedite that matter?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Yusefian, certainly we talked to him. Unfortunately, we are still hammering out the terms of the contract at this point in time. But with our intent, it's one of the things, actually, and glad you brought it up, that I was asking, could we at least order the equipment? I mean, our intent is there. We want to go through with this. Are you waiting until we sign the agreement before you order the equipment? Can we get the equipment ordered so that we can be ready to install it at the time that the agreement is finally executed? We're looking good on the agreement. I think we've come to terms on most of the language. So they said they thought it would be possible to do that either with their inventory or to bring some in. So I express the same concern I think you're expressing. We want to do it quickly, as quickly as we possibly can.
Right.
And so they're cognizant of that, and they're willing to work with us.
Right.
They're anxious to get here. One of the factors that was going to potentially further delay it was the decision of where those locations were going to be, and they have been working on that. So we're confident that they'll get that done quickly. Then we can get the equipment in and start seeing how this device works.
And on the issue of the radars that show your speed, Mr. Mayor, I have 4 of them on East Glenox, my neck of the woods. They do help a lot during the daytime, but late in evening, people sometimes drive at 100, 110 miles an hour in East Glenox. I don't know where these people are going. The park is closed, but I don't know where these BMWs and the MGs, and I just have no idea where these vehicles are going, and they are driving extremely fast. I don't think the radar can even keep up with the speed that they're moving at. During the day, it works fine because most of the residents that are driving in that area, they're going 40, they look at that thing and they immediately slow down, and especially downhill, and I'm also guilty of that once in a while, just kind of rolling down, you realize you're going over the speed limit, and I slow down because it starts counting. But my worry isn't as much as person driving 30, 35 on a 25. My worry is about the guy who's driving 100, 110 miles an hour. And I mean, they are moving, especially at night after 10 o'clock. I know we can't use motorcycle officers at dark, but there may have to be some selective enforcement in some of the places. I mean, this is not a huge, wide street like West Glenox is, which you have 3-4 lanes, but still with 2 lanes, and we did all the striping and all these things, and they still just drive through. I don't know where they're going.
Bring us back some thoughts on that, Mr. Zern.
Well, Mr. Mayor and Councilmember Yusefian, I think you hit the nail on the head. We'll get together with the Traffic Enforcement Bureau of PD. That kind of activity probably needs enforcement more than anything, but we'll get back together with them.
Thank you. Thank you. The next item, please.
8 is action items, and 8A is Director of Parks, Recreation, and Community Services regarding design of Glendale's entry in year 2008 Pasadena Tournament of Roses Parade. At A1 is motion approving that design.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Yusefian.
Move 8A1, but I still like to see what it looks like, because I've seen black and white, and it's gorgeous.
Yeah,
I wanna see it in
we'll have
color.
that up.
Motion and a second, and let's see what we're getting.
Right, we will have it on the screen, and as you know, this is the 93rd Rose Parade, or 93rd entry of Glendale's, actually it's 94th parade, this is, I believe, the 93rd entry for the city of Glendale for the Rose Parade. Is there a way to get it up on the screen?
Yeah, it's on the screen.
Oh, but not on that
beautiful.
screen, okay. The last year's float received an award, a trophy award, and come January 1st, Bill Lofthouse and the Glendale Rose Float Association gets busy again looking at designs. And in January and February, they came up with this design, and it's really fantastic. The theme of this year's parade is Passport to the World Celebration, and the float you see before you is called Bon Voyage, and that represents a vintage airplane flying out of the old Glendale's old Grand Central Terminal. We think this is just a wonderful design compared. Well, the others were wonderful, Bill, but this one really, I think, Bill Lofthouse and his staff really outdid themselves with this one, and we anticipate this winning a number of prizes. The float, as you know, costs $90,000. It's anticipated that the Glendale Rose Float Association will help offset half of that, $45,000, and I think they will be presenting a check next week or the week after to the city. Let me first introduce some of the members of the association. Joyce Sokoloff, who's the president of the Glendale Rose Float Association, Jim Sokoloff, her husband, Sean Bursell, and of course Bill Lofthouse back here, who owns and operates Phoenix Floats. And Bill, thank you. This was a wonderful design that you guys came up with.
Well, it works, at least in this particular case, with people saying, what's it got to do with Glendale, which we do each year. But remember, there's some history. It's the first paved runway west of the Mississippi.
Do you want to come up? On up.
Or see you.
Placement, and for sitting here this long, I'm not functioning as well. But it's the first paved runway west of the Mississippi. It's the first commercial airport on the West Coast. There's a lot of great history here. And so we took pride. And I got to give credit to the committee. With passports to the world's festivals, it's a difficult theme to work with. But Bon Voyage fits. It's Bon Voyage coming and going. Glendale's a destination city. And the airport is, my understanding is, they're going to do some restoration. So I think it works real well. But at least people will say, won't be calling me, or the newspaper especially, saying, what's it got to do with Glendale? It's got a whole lot to do with Glendale. And I agree. It's one of those, all the designs that we do, sometimes it's very subjective. It's very objective. This one works. And, we've been building the Glendale float for a while. We know you have a choice. We work with the committee. We can only say thank you. We don't take it for granted.
Mr. Lofthouse, does this float do anything moves, or it just all stationary?
Well, yes, the propeller rotates on it, and we're still, and actually it's under construction as we speak.
Plane doesn't move at all?
No,
no. Actually, are the people, the pilot and the co-pilot, are they actually
be live? There'll be live elements on there. Actually, will be. So it will have a lot of motion just from the fact that it's live people on the float.
So we'll have 6 people actually on the float. Because
actually more than
4 and 2 there, so 6.
It will be 8.
8 people.
3 on each side.
Okay, because I see 2 in here. Okay.
The airplane.
Okay. Congratulations. Beautiful float. and I worked on a lot of your floats. This one
Well,
takes
you
the
know,
cake.
we've had a chance, we don't have the poster here tonight, but the poster depicts something that we put in the design before we even knew that the poster was all about. His poster for this year's parade is just a giant suitcase with all kinds of decals on it. And if you notice what they're standing on, we did that not knowing what his theme poster was or his theme pin. So it really works. And the president of the tournament, we previewed it with him before we submitted it, and he's very pleased.
That's beautiful.
Thank you. Comments from council? I think we all like it.
What was the theme again? Passport to the world's
World
festivals?
celebration. Passport to the world celebration.
The world celebration.
Very good. Looks great. Can't wait to see it and start to build it. That comes when? December?
He's already started building.
Oh, it's already
The decoration.
Decoration won't be until the first weekend in December.
Very good. Okay. Very good. Do I have a motion?
Yes, there is a motion and a second.
Let's have a roll call, please.
Council members Draymond,
Yes.
Quintero,
Yes.
Weaver, Yusefian,
Aye.
Mayor Najarian.
Yes.
And bon voyage.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
We're at 8B.
8B is City Attorney regarding discussion of filling a vacancy for the City of Glendale on the Burbank-Glendale-Pasadena Airport Authority. B1, motion appointing an individual, including an elected official, to serve the unexpired term of former council member/commissioner Rafi Manukian. At B2 is motion directing staff regarding recruitment and selection process.
Where?
Mr. Yusefian.
Mr. Mayor, I would like to nominate Rafi Manukian to finish his term. He's been there for a while, and for the period of time he's been there, he's been a stable commissioner for the city of Glendale. There are going to be some changes as far as subcommittee rotation is going to take place, and Mr. Manukian, with his experience in accounting, will probably end up in the finance part of the subcommittee. And I think his experience in that accounting will be extremely helpful.
Mr. Quintero.
Okay, I want to start by asking the city attorney to give us more detail, a report, and I don't mean necessarily tonight, but in the form of a report. The FPPC issued a ruling in July 2005, and that has to do with recusing yourself from an appointment like this, et cetera. It's quite complicated, actually, but my question is, the last appointments were about a year ago, so it fell within that July 2005 date when the FPPC issued this ruling, yet no mention was made a year ago or 9 months ago, whenever it was so I'd like to have that clarified in the form of a report or some understanding. We just got this a few days ago, yet the ruling was issued in July 2005. So I'd like to have some feel for why it wasn't mentioned the last go-around, let's put it that way. And then I want to say that my opinion's documented for over 6 years. I've always felt elected officials should serve on the on the airport commission, and I don't like the 4 years. I'm into 2-year rotation, et cetera, et cetera. So what I'll do at this point, having given my opinion, is just recuse myself. I'll leave the dais, and so there won't be any conflicts with FPPC ruling that...
Give us a little background,
Sure,
Mr. Garcia. This is a rather unusual a ruling which would preclude any interested council member from participating and voting and lobbying to be on this commission, and it is a little bit out of the ordinary for us. Can you give us a little bit of background?
Absolutely, Mr. Mayor. With respect to the FPPC opinion, or it's actually regulation, and the airport authority, Generally speaking, appointments or the employment of either an elected official or that elected official's spouse or dependent child, the income from a position such as that usually does not create a conflict of interest. However, the only exception to that prior to 2005 was that where the decision that the council had to make involved the hiring, firing, or promoting of somebody who was either an elected official, appointing oneself or that person's spouse or dependent child. That created a conflict of interest. In 2005, the FPPC amended its regulations to include appointment of officials to commissions where they receive either compensation in the form of salary or other monetary benefits or reimbursement for expenses. In the case of the Airport Authority, I think that type of position falls within that conflict provision. So as a result, what the FPPC regulations require is that if any council person is interested in serving on the Airport Authority, they may not participate in the decision or vote on the matter. And I believe that's why Mr. Quintero has indicated his intent to recuse himself for that reason. And I take it that means that, one, he's interested, and two, obviously would have that financial effect. And just to, I think, briefly respond to Mr. Quintero's question, and we can bring back a full report as far as the timing of these different regulations. As I mentioned, and as mentioned in the memo that we wrote, the regulation was amended in 2005. Was not, I believe, until December of 2006 that the FPPC actually issued an written opinion interpreting that provision and concluding that it did apply to an appointment by the Attorney General of his wife to a volunteer position, although his wife didn't actually have a conflict because she wasn't receiving compensation. So from that opinion, I think at some point during the preparation of this report, we discovered both the regulation and the opinion, and that's why we brought it to your attention at the earliest time possible after that. So that's sort of the timing of how this came about from our perspective, and we're happy to follow up with a further written report.
Yeah, and for the record, also, Mr. Weaver has submitted a letter.
Okay.
Mr. Starberg.
Well, we had a change in representation 2 years ago, I guess, which would have been 1 year ago.
2 years and 1 year ago.
Yeah, 2 years ago and 1 year. So the 1 year ago would have been in April of '06. Okay.
Right.
Mr. Yusefian.
To clarify this issue, I was also on SCAG a while back, goes back almost 4 years, I think, or 3 years. I served for about 2 years there, and that's where the COGS basically elect an elected official to represent. And in this case, it's Burbank and Glendale that pick a council member to represent them in the SCAG. And there is, I think, $100 per meeting. And they meet, I think, if I'm not mistaken, once a month. And there's also subcommittee meetings. If you attend any of the subcommittee meetings, then you get another $100 for that. Would that also fall in that in this category?
In the future, yes, it would. The only possibility, or the only reason it may not fall within it, is if the salary is set, for example, by statute, rather than being SCAG having the authority to set the $100 per meeting salary or compensation.
Right.
But as soon as the body has the authority to control its compensation,
Could we please find that out? And the reason I'm asking is because the person who was representing us is Todd Campbell. And Todd, as you know, has not run, and he's stepping down. So us, as council members, are going to be asked whether or not we would like to serve on SCAG, and the same thing for City of Burbank. And one of our council members is going to make that decision and nominate themselves, or sometimes there'll be more than one or two. So could you find out what we need to do?
Yeah, and actually, I should have mentioned, there's the other exception in this, and this is maybe the reason why it doesn't apply, is that in the case of our Airport Authority Commission, the council is the one who appoints the official, and that's the reason why you have the conflict. In the case of the SCAG, I believe, their
No,
nominees.
we vote.
Oh, Burbank and Glendale.
Both Burbank and Glendale. So let's say, for example, the way I got elected is Stacy Murphy had stepped down, and they send a letter saying, is anybody interested to apply for this position? And I said, I would like to be the representative to Glendale and Burbank. And so I put my nomination forward. Burbank decided they did not want to have a representative. Nobody else in the council in here wanted to do the job. So consequently, there was an election, and the votes were taken, and I got elected by basically a 10-0 vote.
Well, that's a good
so
question.
So this will happen again.
That's a good question. I will follow up.
And it will happen soon. So we need to look into it.
I was going to say, in a brief conversation I had with Scott, I think there was some thinking, because it's a multiple jurisdiction, as opposed to just the city's choice, then there may be an exception to the rule. For example, you have the same thing that occurs on the MTA. In order for R's name to be put forward, this council had to nominate him, so they did have to take a vote to nominate him. But this council wasn't the sole determiner in whether or not R got to go. Now, we did cast our vote as one of the cities, but wasn't the sole determiner. So in that case, I think the feeling has been that's probably an exception to the rule.
Right. The trigger is the appointment, and it's not the Glendale Council alone, acting alone, that appoints the SCAG representative.
I don't want to suppose.
Yeah,
no,
That's why I'm asking,
follow up.
please look into that and let us know.
If I can, this regulation, and it now, I guess, it's now reaching the consciousness of the various city attorneys, because it has been rather obscure in the past, will have far-reaching implications. Glendale doesn't participate in as many of these kinds of governmental agencies for which there is compensation, but I will tell you, other cities, there are lots of those kinds of multiple jurisdictions. I'm thinking of the sanitation districts, for example. Most cities in Los Angeles County are members of one of a number of sanitation districts administered by the county sanitation districts. They hold meetings, and generally they receive a per diem per meeting in the neighborhood of $100 for every district that you attend. I will tell you the vast majority of cities in Los Angeles County are members of those sanitation districts. And this ruling could potentially have an impact on that, because they're elected from their councils to go serve on those boards. So I suspect we're going to hear a lot more about this ruling and its implication for cities in California as city attorneys become more aware of it.
And also, Mr. Mayor, you have given us a list of items that you appoint council members to, and I don't know if some of them are going to be included.
Have you filled yours out yet?
I haven't, and this is part of the reasons.
I need that too.
I don't know if there is any. This is not just getting you per diem. I mean, this is if you get compensated for your out-of-pocket even expenses, correct?
I believe so, yes.
So Economic Alliance is one of them. I mean, if you go to certain events and you spend some money and they pay you back, does that affect that person? San Fernando Transit Zone, a Sister City program, all of these things that we're in here, that's one of the reasons I haven't filled mine, because I don't know where it's going to put me. If I put in here and you're doing the appointing, I'm assuming since the mayor is the only one who does the appointing and we don't vote on it, then we're safe. Am I assuming this right?
We'll need to check that.
We'll take a look at all of them.
At it.
Okay.
We'll take a look at that.
Okay.
It's a good point.
But back to the issue, particularly before us, Mr. Quintero has expressed an interest. Mr. Weaver has expressed an interest, and that's why they're not here today, because they cannot, to avoid the conflict, they are not going to participate and not vote. How many votes?
That's why Mr. Quintero's not here for the record. I mean, Mr. Weaver's absent, and if he was here, he would have recused himself. But it just makes a difference in the what counts as towards the quorum and that sort of thing. But the point is,
what would a quorum be? I mean, we need to pick someone. So we're going to need a unanimous vote?
No, majority of the quorum. Just two.
Two. And let me ask a question about the Airport Commission itself. Are there any Brown Act violations if there are 3 council members from one city sitting on the board?
No, Mr. Mayor, there are not. In fact, I think Pasadena has its council members serve, and the reason it's not a violation is there's a specific exception in the Brown Act which says that it's not a violation if it's a notice in public meeting of another public agency. So it would not be a Brown Act violation if there were three.
Just a correction, Pasadena has only 2 council members. Burbank has none, and we used to have 2 council members. I don't recall, I think with the exception of maybe in the beginning, not even in the beginning.
I don't know.
There was never a 3 council member on there. There was
But
a
there
council
could be.
member and a manager,
There could be.
but there were never.
And it would not be a violation of the Brown Act.
Does our charter in any way restrict the membership to the Airport Commission?
No.
No,
I
the
mean,
airport
other than-
commission isn't addressed in the charter.
Yeah.
really.
It's just in the JPA and the...
Okay. I have 3 cards from the public. Why don't we hear from them? Bonnie Adams, followed by Mike.
Hello, everyone. I keep forgetting to mention my name and introduce. I'm Bonnie Adams, resident of Glendale. I have to say that this has been one of the most confusing council meetings I've been to ever. I mean, I couldn't repeat what anybody said. I don't understand a lot of this, but couple of very quick things, and I guess this whole thing has gotten cuckoo. Could the beverage machine on the corner be tended to? It's still broken. I know. I'm sorry. I also wanted to mention I'm going for Mr. Mnuchin. I'm hoping he'll be able to serve on the commission. I think he's done a good job. I think he should at least finish out his term, and I think that I think he's certainly a good candidate. He's certainly not shy about speaking his mind and saying what he believes. So I really think I'm going for that too. And that's I was going to mention something else, but I can't. So I guess I won't. Go ahead, Mike.
Thank you. Mike Nagel. We'll give you a new clock, Mike.
Okay, that's fine. Good evening, members of the council, Mr. Mayor, city staff. Unlike Councilman Quintero, he believes that somebody who has been an elected official should be appointed to this position. I see members of the council on so many different commissions. You've got your regular council seat. You've got the development council, and how can you do so good a job as a councilman when you're dividing your attention on other duties? I think that it's better to keep a non-council member in this position, and I would have objected on that basis to Mr. Mnuchin, but he's no longer on the council, and therefore that objection has gone away. I endorse Mr. Mnuchin to hold his position and possibly be selected next time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Dr. Richard Espiritu.
Once again, good evening, Mr. Mayor. I am Dr. Richard Espiritu. Members of the council, I would respectfully suggest that Mr. Rafi Mnuchin be reappointed to the Airport Authority for the following reasons. One, he has been on the City Council for the past 8 years and served with integrity. I brought that issue up one other time, integrity, because you forgot that word, Mr. Yusefian. And he also showed respect to every member who came to the dais, spoke here. Number two, he has also served with dignity on the Airport Authority for the last couple of years. And number three, he has a very working knowledge of the city of Glendale, so that he can help the Airport Authority and inform the people of the city of Glendale and the powers that be of what is going on. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
That's it? No more
We have no. That's it for the cards. Let me express my opinions on this. Unless you'd like to go first, Mr.
No,
Okay. I'm also of the mind to appoint former councilman, former Mayor Rafi Manoukian, for pretty much the same reasons that we've heard, is that he did serve the city honorably for 8 years. He's a man of integrity. He does have a background. I didn't know this until Mr. Yusefian indicated that he may be at a position in the finance committee of the airport. I think it's a good form to have CPA or someone trained in finance to be there. That being said, I want to perhaps go a step further, and I'm not going to. I'm going to leave my comments for Mr. Manoukian there. I did say 2 years ago that it would be my preference that we have more of a rotation and a chance for others to serve on the airport commission. I still feel that way. I would like to see. I would like to avoid the type of situations where we've had in the past with certain folks staying on for years and years. Personally, in this instance, as is quite obvious, and as we know, there's two colleagues, two councilmen have expressed an interest in being on the airport commission. I think they should have a chance to vie for one of those seats as well. So I'm not going to be opposed to revisiting the position of Mr. Pavlovitis, Sergeant Pavlovitis, who has done a yeoman's job. However, I think as a council, we need to be fair, and I have two colleagues that have very much expressed an interest to be on the commission. They should be given a chance to do so during their course on the council. So at some point in the future, I'm not giving anyone a pink slip at this point or even suggesting that, but I would be willing to revisit and give, apparently in the past it wasn't such a coveted seat, but obviously we do have quite a bit of interest in holding one of those airport commission positions. And again, out of a sense of fairness, I think we should give the opportunity for other councilmen to hold one of those seats. We will discuss that at a later time upon a motion, but for now it is only the appointment of filling the seat that was vacated by Mr. Manoukian upon the election results last week. Mr. Youssef.
Mr. Mayor, I know since I just wanted to let you know that, as you know, every 2 years, actually every year, the commission goes through electing president, vice president, treasurer, and secretary. And actually, a secretary, not a treasurer. Treasurer is somebody else. But nevertheless, it's been customary that they basically keep those positions every 2 years. So they change them every 2 years, even though the vote is there. When I got in the first year, I was unaware of the custom. So I automatically assumed that the vice chair will become the chair. So I opened my mouth and stuck my foot in it by nominating Mr. Pavlovitis, who was the vice chair at the time. And then I was quickly reminded by my other colleagues that you do not know how the procedure is and what the tradition is, and this is how the tradition is, which at that point immediately I redrew my motion, but I just wanted my colleagues to also know that this time around, Mr. Pavlovitis will be up for the chairmanship of that organization. In the past, the way the the chairmanship had worked is some people in Burbank would say that city of Glendale and Pasadena sometimes had a privilege of being the chair way too many times than they did. And so in the past few years, they have created this rotation. So you have 2 years of Burbank, 2 years of Pasadena, 2 years of Glendale, then back to Burbank again. So they don't feel that they're slighted. So I just wanted to bring that to my colleagues' attention. And of course, I understand what my colleague is saying, and that's something if we would like to revisit, we need to keep some of these items in mind as we move forward. But at this point, I think the item that's on the table is Mr. Manukian's reappointment, and there's, I think, only one nomination.
Mr. Draymond.
I just wanted to comment on a couple of things. One is, Bonnie, you and I have something in common, and that is tonight's been a particularly confusing evening for me as well. And since I'm the new person here, I might have something to do with your confusion. I apologize for that. But the other thing is I just wanted to clarify, I'm not sure what I heard from Mr. Quintero was the suggestion that only elected council members should serve. But at least what I understood him to say is that the rotation or the limit should be a shorter time limit, something like 2 years. And I fully agree with that, and I hope, Mayor Najarian, that we will bring something to council about that so that there is a greater turnover of these seats and we don't have a series of people who serve forever and ever and ever, although I also agree. Carl Povolitis has done a wonderful job. Thank you.
Do you like airplanes, Mr. Draymond?
I love airplanes, not afraid to fly.
Okay.
As long as they stay in the air.
Okay, very good.
I'm happy with them.
Okay, do we need a second on the motion nominating
It's a nomination, so you can
former council,
ask
former
if there are
mayor?
any more
Monkey?
nominations.
Okay, are there any other nominations? Do we need to close a motion to close nominations?
Close nominations.
All you need to do is close it.
I'm going to close nominations then, and let's call the roll for the appointment of Rafi Manukian to fill the unexpired term of Rafi Manukian to the Airport Commission.
Understood.
Okay.
Council members.
Unexpired term of Mr. Weaver, yeah.
Who's filling the unexpired term of Mr. Weaver?
Council members Draymond,
Yes.
Quintero, Weaver, Yusefian,
Aye.
Mayor Najarian.
Yes. The next item, please.
Is there any new business?
We do, but...
Perhaps.
There was. I think I put it on Mr. Quintero's.
Very good.
I have the new business.
I move that the city attorney be and hereby is authorized to enter into a retainer agreement with Raymond Sakai, the law firm Francel, Strickland, Roberts, and Lawrence, to investigate a personnel matter and to incur all necessary expenses in connection therewith. The retainer agreement shall, in addition to other provisions, contain a fee cap.
A motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Council members Draymond,
Yes.
Quintero,
Yes.
Weaver, Yusefian,
Aye.
Mayor Najarian.
Yes. Thank you. There's no more new business. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
We are adjourned.
Artie.